Welcome back to Bill's Retro Stuff. And today we're tinkering with a Kenwood 720 or a KR-720. This amplifier's been kind of giving me a fit. I bought it a while back just to tinker around with because I wanted to get back into some stuff around. This was manufactured around 78 to 79, 80, 81 roughly there in those 4 years. Been running into a lot of issues with this, and unfortunately it's not a high-end amplifier, so therefore it's really picky. Bought it just to kind of have in my stereo cabinet I refinished, which I'll get to a video on. It's not going to be a long because I've already done stuff. I had a bad capacitor here, or a blown one, so I replaced it. Replaced some back here, which really weren't that bad, and 2 small ones up in, well, here's one here, and well, that must be the only one I replaced. The other, well, I put one right up in here I replaced. Was having some amplifier overheating issues, and could not figure out what's going on. To bias this one here, and biasing means to try to get whatever the speaker output to 0, and also your amplifiers have to have a certain amount of voltage on a low end to keep the amp active, so that you just don't have issues like if it's 0 volts and you turn it up, you may have some distortion and stuff till the amplifier kind of warms up a little bit. Unfortunately with this type of amplifier, which is again was a cheaper amplifier, a little 40 watter, I was having all kinds of fits. I was having this side over here overheating. Found out that you had to put the bottom plate on, and that seemed to settle it down. I replaced these 2 resistors, which were 500 ohms. These here trim out for the millivolts that goes into the amplifier, and they wanted to have 35.2. I'm keeping it a little bit lower than that, but my issue with this is I can't, when it's cold, I mean that stuff's all over the place. Of course they always tell you to at least let it warm up 10-15 minutes before you bias an amplifier, but I can't keep the millivolts steady enough that it's raising, you know, maybe when it's cold it'll be up 35 millivolts, down to, then as it warms up it'll creep around -0 and it'll go up to 10 millivolts. I can't keep it constant. I don't know what the deal is with that. I've tried putting heat sinks on, put heat sink underneath here to try to keep something, you know, try to dissipate some of the heat, and although they're not getting hot now, but it's been a big mess. I mean, I think my next amplifier I'm going to get one that's a little higher end, a little older. It has, you know, a lot better setup than this. So basically, if you want to bias that and you need to keep your speakers to 0, you see how it's I don't know if you can see or not, but it's dancing between negative, and then it'll go all the way up to 10 millivolts and bounce around. I don't know what else to do about it. I don't know if the trim pots in here are bad, and they might be, but I'm just done messing with this amplifier, to be honest with you. I don't usually give up on stuff. I'm going to use it as it is, play with it, and do whatever I normally do until I decide to buy the one I really want to buy. And then we'll do a little video on it. Hopefully I won't have to do as much work. But so you always want to hook your speakers up. I know that much because you want a load, unless you have an 8 ohm load, and I don't have one. So I hooked up the speakers so that we have an 8 ohm load. You want to put your to a source where there's, like me, I've got it on tape player and phono to keep the source down to 0. You know, you don't want any signal going into it, even if it's your tuner. All right, because your tuner will put a signal in there, but you don't want that. So you want nothing. You want no signal going in. You know, even if a signal generator or whatever else. But we'll keep going with that. I'm not going to keep rambling on that. So and you do that, and then what you've got to do, at least on this particular amplifier, you've got to tap off the there's a resistor right here, and basically they want this to be no more than 35.2, and we're running 34. Well, they want it 35.2 to, I guess, to kick the amplifier up, but I think I'm going to try to keep it lower because it it's just something about it's not quite right. And now let me check the other side over here. But the other side over here, see where it reads. This one here seems to be more stable than the other side, which I thought, well, they're both about 34. So that I can handle. It's only 1.2 millivolts under, and you know, as it warms up, it might change. It might increase a little bit more. But if you're going to get in these old amplifiers and replace any of the capacitors, you really need, especially into the power supplies or any of that stuff, you really need to rebias the amplifier. This is my first, I guess, my first playing around with that type of stuff. But now biased, or we call it tuning, DC servos and CNC. But this is the first time I've done an amplifier, and it's just been a challenge to try to keep everything constant. Like I said, I've replaced the variable pots in here and everything, and I've tried to get it to be the best I can. I know when you first turn on, for some reason it just doesn't have a very clear sound, but then as it warms up, it does a fine job. But you know, it's it just, I don't know. If you're going to do any vintage amplifiers from the late 70s, early 80s, I'm going to be honest with you, your best bet is to buy a higher end amplifier. They may cost a little bit more, but I think you would be better off with them, to be honest with you. I think they're a lot more, they're more honed in than these here. These here were just something you could buy, and you know, they weren't, I don't know what they cost new, but I'm sure, you know, they ain't costing like maybe a Kenwood KR-720, 5051 or 5010, 5010, whatever, 5010, I guess. Those would probably be a better amplifier in general, because I think they're just better. They were higher end. They cost more to do, and you know, they just cost more. These cheaper ones are just. Oh, and also replace the light in the dial gauge, or so that you can see the dial. But anyway, I am done with this amplifier. It's just going to be what it is until I decide to do what I want to do. I'm wrestling with it. We'll find out it later on if I decide to do that. But yeah, I'm just tired of chasing this amplifier. It's just wasn't. They had old cheap metal pot, trim pots, and these two white ones I replaced. They just weren't really high quality. I could not for the life of me to get anything where it needed to be. Right now I'm having trouble keeping the speaker down to 0 millivolts. Granted, it's only been, I think the max I ever got is 35 millivolts, so we're going to live with that. I can't get it at 0, it won't stay at 0. I'm assuming these trim pots need to be replaced. I'm not going to order another set of trim pots. I've just had enough of dealing with it. So this is just a little, I guess, kind of a rant video, and a kind of I don't know, kind of like, hell with this type of thing, you know. It's, if you want to tinker with this stuff, you're more welcome to. You're probably going to have to buy new trim pots and stuff. You know, some of the stuff has just gotten old. And this one here, the problem with this amplifier, it had a lot of gunk in here, so I had to clean it up, and I think that was part of the issue with this amplifier. And it might have been better if you found one that didn't have, like it was in a house and just had dust in it, but this had some black gunk in it, and it took me forever to get it cleaned up so I could actually run it. It stunk, you know. So, you know, maybe that's just been my thing of it. You know, maybe it was just one of those, maybe it's just, I don't know, maybe it's just the one I had got. You know, maybe if I would have got a better one, it might have been a little better. But like I said, my run-in with this has not been, on this amplifier here, not been good. I mean, all the screws were loose. It was just dirty. I had to take everything apart and clean the face. The face was so dirty you couldn't, you know, it's just smoky. Like I said, I don't know what else to say about it. I think we're there. But yeah, this capacitor, what started this whole issue, this was bulged out, and then when I opened it up, it was just dirty. Actually, I've cleaned them up, but you know, this is the capacitor. No, that didn't come out of here. I cleaned them all up, so it's hard to tell what it, but it had some black gunk in it, and some black gunk in it, and I couldn't get that capacitor out of there. It was actually, I don't know what I did with that capacitor, and I don't know if I threw it away. I was going to show you what it looked like. It was leaking around the bottom, and the top was bulged on it. It still tested good though, but you know, when they're bulged and they're leaking like that, it's just a matter of time. These were bulged a little bit too. Those ones back up in here were bulged a little bit too. Put these heat sink on to kind of dissipate a little bit more heat. Probably don't really need to use them now because I've got it somewhat stable, but we'll leave it alone. I'll leave it alone. But anyway, that's just a brief overview of what you got to do to work on amps and stuff like that. And if you can, possibly buy you a little higher quality. Kenwood, Pioneers, Sansui. Sansui's are the best, but they cost. When you see some on the internet, it costs a lot of money, even for vintage. It probably costs a lot of money new. Because I know some of those were bought during Vietnam. You know, a lot of them brought them back from Vietnam and overseas models. I worked on some when I was a kid or younger. Well, I guess I was a kid. That was bought from Vietnam, and you know, so when they bought it from Vietnam, brought it home, and I worked on some where they've overloaded them or, you know, did other things with them they probably shouldn't have done. But like I said, you know, spend some money and buy a higher end quality, you know. But just remember, when you have to bias something, you know, when you change any capacitors and anything, you're better off biasing the whole thing, or you might anyway, because it may drift it over time, over the years, you know, and that does happen. I mean, a lot. It does, you know, does happen a lot, where over the years they just drift over time, you know. But anyway, that's my rant. Thanks for watching, and see you later.